A man walks into a room, takes the best seat at the table, and is ordered out of the city before anybody stands up again. That chair is the nearest anyone in King's Landing gets to Tywin Lannister that year, and sitting in it costs him his office. Nobody dies and nobody draws a sword. 5 people walk into a room and sit down. It runs about a minute with almost no dialogue, and that is the entire event, which is why it gets filed under the funny ones. Musical chairs with murderers. Season 3, Episode 3, Walk of Punishment. The first small council meeting with Tywin Lannister as Hand of the King, and the episode does something almost nothing else in the series does. It puts a silent minute and a spoken minute back to back, and lets the second answer the first. Watch what the second minute does to the first. In the silent minute, 5 people rank themselves by how close they are willing to sit to power, and Petyr Baelish gets there first. Tyrion drags his chair as far from his father as the room allows in order to be left alone. In the spoken minute, the meeting answers all 5 of them the same way, and Tyrion walks out of it holding a job he never asked for. Everybody who reached for something gets moved away from the thing they reached for, and the only 2 left where they started are the 2 who reached for nothing. I am giving you the rule now because the scene is better to watch when you know what you are watching for. Start with the table, because the table is wrong before anybody walks in. 2 long sides, 2 ends. Tywin takes one end, and every chair has been placed along a single side, in a row, facing him. Consider how strange that is. Chairs go around a table, that being the function of a table, and nobody accidentally arranges a council chamber like a schoolroom. Somebody lined them up wrong on purpose. The reason it works is geometric before it is dramatic. A circle has no first place. A line does. The moment you force ambitious people to choose a position in a line, you have stopped seating them and started asking them to rank themselves in front of the people they are ranking themselves against. Nobody can be accused of asking, because nobody asked. The furniture is conducting the interview. Tywin watches the door, then the door opens, and the first man through does not walk in. He arrives. Baelish comes through that door, his eyes find the chair nearest Tywin, and he does not break stride. Straight to it. No pause at the threshold, no glance around the room, no half-second of arithmetic. The decision was made on the walk over and he was still holding it when the door opened. That is what makes one movement so expensive. Baelish is the sharpest political mind in the capital, and his whole theory of the world is that power is an illusion, a shadow on a wall that exists because enough people agree to see it. He built a life out of controlling how things look, and he cannot stop himself from looking hungry. Nobody at that table needs the distinction explained. A man who has power sits where he likes. A man who wants power sits as near to it as he can get. Baelish answered honestly, which is the one thing he never does, in 4 seconds, before a word was said, and everything Tywin needed arrived in a pair of footsteps that never slowed down. That is the man from the first line of this video, and now watch what the chair buys him. Tywin takes it away from him before the meeting is over. He bought 12 inches in front of 4 witnesses, and the 12 inches expire while he is still sitting in them. That is the rule landing on the first of the 5. It lands on all of them before anybody leaves the room. Watching where people put themselves before anybody speaks is a habit rather than a trick. It is the first of 5 questions in a book I wrote, The Quiet Game, which is linked below if you want to run them yourself. The man walking in behind Baelish heard those footsteps too. Varys enters second and does something that looks like nothing whatsoever. He takes the next chair along, calmly, with a small smile, offering no competition and no complaint. The lazy reading is that Varys is being humble, and Varys has never been humble in his life. Watch the smile instead. That is a man declining to enter a contest he has already worked out is worthless. Baelish spent the walkover deciding which chair he wanted. Varys does not appear to have thought about it once. One of them needs the room to hand him something. The other already has what he came for, and it does not fit on a chair. Now the honest problem with that, the chair Varys took was simply the next one available, which on its own proves nothing. It only becomes readable in contrast. Baelish crossed a room to reach one specific chair, and Varys stopped at the first one, 4 seconds apart, in the same doorway, in front of the same audience. The comparison is the evidence. The seat is not, which is the moment to deal with the objection somebody is already typing, that these are chairs and I am reading too much into furniture. 3 things are on the record, in ascending order of how badly they end that argument. First, this scene does not exist in the novels. It was invented for the television show. Somebody sat down at a keyboard, in a series with a body count, and decided that 5 people choosing where to sit was worth a full minute of screen time and almost no dialogue. Second, the episode was written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss and directed by Benioff. and it was the first time either showrunner stepped behind the camera on their own series. Out of roughly 70 hours of television, this is one of the few they directed themselves. Third, and this is the one that finishes it. According to the production designer, Gemma Jackson, the script called for Cersei to move her chair around to her father's side, and the real chairs on that set were too heavy for Lena Headey to lift. A department was handed a physical problem, and the solution was not to cut the moment or have somebody move it for her. They built a chair, a lighter one, made specifically so that a woman could carry a piece of furniture across a room in a scene with no dialogue in it. That is not coincidence. It is authorship, and it is documented. It also produces an irony belonging to the making of the show rather than to Westeros, so I will label it as exactly that. The only chair in that room that weighs nothing is Cersei's. There is still something I cannot show you though. Nobody on screen orders those chairs into a row, and there is no line where Tywin says he wants them that way. What the production did is proven. What Tywin intended is not, and keeping those two apart is most of the work here. Back to the door, because the third man through gives the saddest answer in the scene, and it is the same answer that eventually gets him killed. Grand Maester Pycelle does not compete. He stopped competing decades ago. He shuffles in and takes the third chair without glancing at the better ones, and he does not run the small social calculation that every human being runs walking into a meeting. He goes down the line and he sits. That is a strategy rather than a failure. Pycelle served Aerys, then Robert, and now Joffrey, and he watched a dynasty burn down and kept his chain. You do not survive 3 kings by being important. You survive by being forgettable. His mouth does the same work as his chair. When the Lysa-Arryn marriage comes up, Pycelle points out that it would make Baelish acting Lord of the Vale, announcing another man's promotion in front of the man who granted it, at no cost to himself. It works, and it works beautifully for about 50 years, and then it kills him. Pycelle dies alone in a dark room, lured there by Qyburn and finished by Qyburn's little birds. No ceremony, no witnesses who mattered, and nobody came looking, because he had spent half a century making certain that nobody would ever think to. Fourth through the door is the one who refuses to answer the question at all. Cersei does not join the line. She lifts her chair, carries it around the table, and sets it down beside her father at the head, facing the 3 men she has just stepped out of formation with. Everybody else accepted the board as laid out. Cersei picked up a piece and moved it off the board. She is not one of Tywin's officials, she does not queue, and she intends to sit with him rather than in front of him. For a long time I thought that was the smartest move anybody makes in the scene. I have changed my mind, and what changed it was not where she put the chair, it was noticing what everybody else in that room actually has. Varys has spies, Pycelle has the Citadel, Baelish has the Treasury, and in a few minutes Tyrion will have the Treasury. Every other person at that table holds a portfolio, something they are physically responsible for that would go unattended if they died on the way home. Cersei holds the regency. The regency is an office, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. It is also the only office in that room that nobody actually performs. Ask Varys what he did yesterday and there is a name and a city. Ask Pycelle and there is a letter. Ask what the regency did yesterday and the answer is that Joffrey is still young and Cersei is still his mother. It exists because of who she is related to, which makes it inherited and temporary and already expiring, and Tywin's arrival as Hand has hollowed it out. She is the regent, and a man who is not the regent is running the realm from the head of her own table. That is a proximity title rather than a function title, which is exactly what the chair is. She is trying to convert blood into office, with her hands, in front of the one man alive who has never respected anything except office. And hers is the only move in the scene aimed at a person rather than a position on a board. Last through the door is the man everybody in that room has spent his life underestimating. Tyrion stops. He looks. He reads the whole board in about 2 seconds. Baelish's beeline and Varys's smile, and Pycelle's retreat, and Cersei's relocation, and he can see exactly what each of them handed over. Then he does the loudest thing anybody does in this scene. He takes the last chair and he drags it. Not lifts, drags, the full length of the table, wooden legs on stone, and the sound keeps going for far longer than it has any right to, while 5 of the most dangerous people in Westeros sit in silence and are made to listen. Then he sets it down at the opposite end, directly facing his father, mirroring him, and sits. Everybody else was answering the question of how close to power they could get. Tyrion answered a completely different one, which is, who am I sitting across from? You do not sit at the far end of a table from your master. You sit at the far end from your equal or from your opponent, because that is where the other player sits. Tyrion did not take a seat on the council. He took the second chair on a board and made his father the first. The layer underneath is less flattering. He could have carried it, and he chose not to. Tyrion has spent his life being looked past and talked over, so when he finally gets one move in front of the four most powerful people in the kingdom, he refuses to make it quietly, and every second of that scrape says that you will notice me. Baelish needed to be near power. Tyrion needed to be seen by it. Neither is the appetite of a man who is secure, which leaves the seat nobody discusses. Tywin takes the head, the one position never in question, and he does not spend a second deciding, because it was settled before the door opened. 4 people spent that minute arranging themselves around a point he had already defined. And now the detail that cuts against everything I have told you, which I am including because it is real and you will notice it on a rewatch. Tywin never reacts. No cutaway to him registering Baelish's speed, no flicker at Cersei's chair, no response to the drag. If this were a test being scored, you would expect one shot confirming somebody was keeping score, and there isn't one. The case does not rest on Tywin watching, it rests on what the meeting does next. 60 seconds later, the dialogue starts settling accounts, and this is where the rule does the rest of its work. Baelish, the man who crossed a room to sit 12 inches from the hand of the king, is told in that room that he is being married to Lysa Arryn and sent to the Vale. Removed from the capital, office vacated, minutes after taking the best seat in the house. He reached for proximity, and the meeting took the proximity back before he had finished enjoying it. Cersei, who moved her chair to claim a share of the authority at the head of that table, is not consulted about either decision. The Vale marriage is settled without her, and the new Master of Coin is appointed without her. She is the only person in that room who receives no instruction, no question, and no piece of business the entire meeting. The chair bought her the geography and none of the function. And Tyrion, who dragged his chair as far from his father as the room allowed in order to be treated as an equal, is handed Baelish's job, Master of Coin. He reached for equality and was given a subordinate's workload, the crown's debts to the Iron Bank, all of the responsibility and none of the authority, in public, with no way to refuse. 3 people reached, 3 people got moved, and every one of them got moved away from the thing they reached for. Now look at the 2 who did not reach. Varys and Pycelle both hold offices and both have ambitions, so this was never about who wanted things. It is about who made a claim inside that room. Neither of them made one, and neither is touched. Varys even absorbs a public failure in that meeting, because Tywin is openly displeased that the spy networks cannot locate Jaime, and it costs him nothing. He was never standing anywhere he could be pushed from. I also have to correct something I believed about this scene for years, and it makes Tywin worse rather than better. I used to read the Master of Coin appointment as punishment for the drag. It is not. Watch the order of the dialogue. Tyrion is the one who raises the objection, pointing out that if Baelish leaves for the Vale, then the crown has no treasurer with the most expensive royal wedding in living memory approaching, and Tywin's answer to the problem Tyrion identified is to make it Tyrion's problem. He was not sentenced. He argued himself into it. And the strongest objection to this entire video arrives right here, so it deserves an answer instead of a dismissal. Baelish did not actually lose. Pycelle says so out loud in the scene. Marrying Lysa makes him acting Lord of the Vale, a larger title than anything he holds in King's Landing, and the Vale is what eventually gives him real soldiers and the closest he ever comes to genuine power. That objection is correct, and it does not break the reading, it completes it. The most useful thing that ever happens to Petyr Baelish is being taken away from the chair he wanted. He is removed from proximity and handed a power base. It is the making of him, and he does not want it. He reached for the wrong currency in front of the one man in Westeros who could tell the difference, and the meeting corrected him against his will. Proximity and power are not the same thing, and the scene proves it by moving everybody who confused the two. There is a last piece of this, 5 seasons later. In the final episode, Tyrion walks into a small council chamber again, and before anyone else arrives, he notices the chairs are not sitting level, and he straightens them. That finale was directed by the same 2 men who directed the chair scene. Whatever anybody thinks of how the series ended, the gesture is exact. The boy who once made an entire room listen to him sit down became the man who quietly squares up the furniture in an empty one, with nobody watching and nothing left to prove. He is also the only person from that original table still in the building. So, 4 chairs in a line, Tywin at the head, and you are walking through that door. Most people will say they would take the second chair, Varys's chair, the patient one, the one that costs nothing. Be honest about whether you would actually have the discipline for it, or whether you would have done what Baelish did and been halfway across the room before you noticed you were moving. Where do you sit?